Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
August 11, 2020, the Big Mac edition. And we begin with that story from click2houston.com. That's KPRC Television in Houston, Texas, who reports that McDonald's is suing its ousted CEO, alleging he destroyed evidence of inappropriate relationships with employees. Stephen Easterbrook, who was ousted last year over an inappropriate relationship with an employee, was alleged by McDonald's to have covered up relationships with 3 other employees and destroyed evidence. Now the company wants to reclaim millions of dollars in compensation paid to Easterbrook. The lawsuit, continued fallout from the Me Too movement, alleges that Easterbrook acknowledged he had exchanged videos and text messages in a non-physical, consensual relationship with an employee, but he told the company there were no other similar instances. No doubt, seeing a very fine line, turned out that he had 3 consensual relationships that were physical with other McDonald's employees that he didn't tell the company about. So another CEO is in big trouble. But this time it's for lying to his own company. Next up from the Wall Street Journal, Kodak shares plummet as a planned $765 million loan is put on ice. The SEC is investigating the disclosure of the loan and the stock options granted to executives, which allowed them to make a killing on the stock market before the loan. They got the options before the loan was announced. And of course, after the loan was announced, stock in the company shot up and they were able to make much more than they were, so much so that the stock had been trading in the $4 range. It went up to $60 after the news of the loan. It's now dropped back down closer to its regular value, but for that period, the options were incredibly valuable. The company is being investigated for the SEC around these options and how it got this loan. Next up, from Kevin LaCroix at his always great D&O Diary, he reports on corruption allegations leading to serious follow-on securities lawsuits filings. He points to the Airbus and First Energy cases. Airbus, of course, was the world's largest international anti-corruption case, which settled earlier this year. And the First Energy case involves the Speaker of the House from Ohio around allegations that he was bribed to pass legislation for First Energy. So once again, the cost of any fine and penalty is not necessarily the most highest or the biggest cost, is the follow-on litigation. In the case of Petrobras, for instance, cost them $3 billion. And finally, from Dylan Tokar over at the Wall Street Journal Risk and Compliance Journal, Interactive brokers to pay $38 million in anti-money laundering claims. 3 regulators fined the brokerage over alleged compliance lapses, including failure to report suspicious trades. The entities, or rather the government entities involved, included the SEC, the U.S. Commodities Futures Trading Commission, and Financial Industrial Regulatory Authority. So a big fine for money laundering violations, reminding compliance practitioners that you need to keep your AML program in place. You can get in big trouble if you violate it. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.